News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KBNU.
KBNU News Time is 4:03. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by U&I Furniture. Emergency crews were called to a semi-truck rollover. This occurred yesterday in Logan Canyon, US 89. The crash occurred between the Dugway and Blind Hollow Trailhead. Utah Highway Patrol Sergeant Jason Kendrick said the semi was traveling towards Bear Lake. The trailer was hauling bags of baking flour. Driver of the truck told troopers she felt her load shift after coming up out of the Dugway. The movement caused the truck to go off the highway and roll onto its side. Kendrick said the driver had only minor injuries. She was transported to Logan Regional Hospital for treatment. The truck was traveling around 30 miles per hour, according to the preliminary investigation. No other vehicles were involved. Kendrick said the impact of the crash ripped open the roof of the trailer, spilling bags of flour on the hillside. Although there was quite a mess, crews were able to investigate and clear the wreckage without having to close the road. KBNU News Time is 4:04. KBNU weather for tonight, mostly clear skies and kind of windy conditions. South winds 15 to 25 miles per hour. Early this evening, low overnight in the low 50s. Sunny, cooler with patchy smoke from western wildfires tomorrow, high around 80. And then sunny, upper 80s on Thursday. It's been to 92. It's 92 degrees right now at KBNU. When you need roof repair or replacement, don't call just anybody. Call someone with the experience, knowledge, and skill to get the job done right. Roof Rescue, 435-999-4268.
U&I Furniture has always been here to give you great value for your money. When it comes to home furnishings, it really is always a better buy at U&I. And right now, U&I is closing out last year's model mattresses. Closeouts on new models and displays, too. Memory foam, innerspring, and hybrids from a number of different name brand manufacturers. And ask U&I to show you this popular copper-infused mattress that sleeps cooler. And did you know U&I has a good selection of sheets and mattress protectors, too? U&I Furniture, over 90 years in downtown Logan. There's always a better buy at U&I.
KBNU News Time is 4:05. On Monday, 6 confirmed cases of E. coli in Cache County were reported to the Bear River Health Department, and preliminary tests suggest a potential cluster of cases. To determine the possible source of the infection and to identify any potential links between reported cases, BRHD is working with both the Utah State Laboratory and the Utah Department of Health and Human Services. Commonly, E. coli bacteria is found in the intestines of humans and animals and in the environment. Most strains are harmless, but some can cause severe illness. Symptoms of E. coli infection often include abdominal cramps and pain, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, and fever. Anyone experiencing these symptoms should contact a medical provider. BRHD Health Officer Jordan Mathis said that although they are actively working to identify the source of the outbreak, there is no risk to the general public at this time. The Bear River Health Department is encouraging residents to wash hands thoroughly with soap and water before preparing food and after using the bathroom. Cook meat thoroughly, avoid consuming raw milk, and thoroughly wash garden-grown fruits and vegetables. Since early August, 8 cases of E. coli were reported in Utah County, and at least 5 of the individuals have been hospitalized due to the severity of symptoms. Epidemiologists investigating in Lehigh identified the likely source of the spread was using pressurized irrigation water for drinking and playing. Months after a Utah TikTok star and social media influencer was arrested and charged with assault, domestic violence, and criminal mischief, she entered a guilty plea. In February, Taylor Frankie Paul was arrested after allegedly hitting and throwing metal chairs at her boyfriend, according to Fox 13 News. One of the chairs she threw at the man also hit her child in the head, according to arresting documents. The documents reported a video of the incident shows Paul kick the victim, put him in a chokehold, and strike him multiple times. The video also showed Paul throwing the stools and her child crying after being hit with the stool. 6 months after her arrest, Paul pleaded guilty to one count of aggravated assault, a third-degree felony. As part of the plea deal, other charges were dismissed, including 2 counts of domestic violence in the presence of a child, third-degree felonies, a Class A misdemeanor charge of child abuse, and a Class B misdemeanor charge of criminal mischief. Paul must comply with specific conditions, including participating in counseling, obtaining a substance abuse and domestic violence evaluation, and not violating any other laws. Her guilty plea will be held in abeyance for 3 years, and if she successfully completes the agreement, the aggravated assault charge will be entered as a Class A misdemeanor. KVNU News Time is 4:08. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com.
Updates every 30 minutes and breaking news as it happens. News Talk KVNU, your #1 radio station for news and talk.
What can the cleanest laundromat in northern Utah do to improve your experience? How about a total remodel with the addition of more big machines? Mount Logan Laundry, a Best of Northern Utah medalist, recently remodeled the Logan Laundromat, and they invite you to see the changes. They added 10, 50, and 80-pound washers and 16 50-pound dryers, which means you get in and out quicker. Located in Brigham on 7th South and the newly remodeled Logan location on 9th North, Mount Logan Laundry is still the cleanest spot in town.
Live life without restrictions. Monson Vision in Logan is a world-class vision correction surgical center unlike any other. From modern LASIK vision correction to advanced laser cataract and near vision correction, Dr. Monson and his team are here to help you see better and, in turn, live better. Modern vision correction is designed to help you live a life without restrictions, enabling you to do more of the things you love. See if you are a candidate at your free, no-pressure VIP vision evaluation. Visit MonsonVision.com.
I spent a couple of minutes online to help pay for college. A quick visit online made getting this federal job possible.
I logged in to ease my path to citizenship.
If you're a man age 18 to 25, go to sss.gov to register with the Selective Service System. It's your civic duty, and it helps secure access to lifelong benefits.
I registered because, hey, it's what you do.
Go to sss.gov and register today. It's the law.
Did you know 22 Americans die each day waiting for organ transplants, most of them for kidneys? The good news is that MatchingDonors.com is helping to change that. MatchingDonors.com is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that links organ donors with people in desperate need of kidneys and other transplants. And now you don't need to donate a kidney to save a life. You can donate your boat, car, or real estate, with 100% of the proceeds going to help save the lives of people needing organ transplants. Visit MatchingDonors.com or call 800-385-0422.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cash Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have 2 guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVNU's For the People. It is Tuesday, August 29th. I'm Jason Williams. Thank you for joining us. I really have got to get in the habit of doing vocal exercises before the show when the allergy seasons hit, because oftentimes I haven't talked for a little while, and then I start talking, and
I didn't know my voice was so gravelly.
Welcome to KVN. Yeah, it's that time for people who enjoy, I like to say, oftentimes people say suffer seasonal allergies. I like to say enjoy seasonal allergies because
you can enjoy them.
Yeah, try and look on the bright side of things, right?
They're fun to have.
Oh, man. Speaking of looking on the bright side, this is a person that I rarely sympathize with folks in elected offices because, they chose to run and be there. And oftentimes if I happen to hear them complain, it can get a little irritating. This isn't a person that's complained, but it's a person that I do sympathize with. In fact, I was thinking about this. In Cache County, we've had... so we'll be speaking later on the show with the new Cache County clerk. We'll be talking about how they met the challenge of the legislature moving primary election day to next Tuesday and general election day to the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, and doing that kind of on short notice. This was all done by the legislature because the state's own election law wouldn't have allowed for a special election to replace Congressman Chris Stewart to happen this year. Because in election law, there are 90-day periods mandated between candidate filing days, primaries, and general election days. And I think that's a good rule to have in general. And I don't know if there's anything magic about 90 days as opposed to 80 or 110, but having a significant amount of time between the three, candidate filing period, any primary that might happen in an election year, and the general election, it gives, not only does it give election planners and county clerks and during presidential election year, state parties time to organize and get people, knowing about the election, which is surprisingly a challenging thing to do. Not as much in a presidential year than in a municipal year, but still. So I think the 90-day period is an important thing to do. There was talk of maybe a special session to change the law, and lawmakers, I think they had two choices. They could do nothing and have a special election to replace Congressman Stewart next spring, which, to be honest, probably wouldn't have hurt District 2 very much, but it would have meant District 2 went, 6 months or so without a congressional voice, without a representative in the United States Congress. Not the end of the world. It's happened before, but it also would have complicated things greatly for Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy, which is, I'm sure, where the pressure came for Utah lawmakers to do something this year. His majority is slim and unreliable in the sense that the Republican caucus at the federal level there in Congress is a bit fractured and divided into various factions that McCarthy can't guarantee he's got a reliable block of votes from. And so every seat literally matters in McCarthy's eyes, in leadership's eyes, with that Republican majority in the House. So I'm sure there was pressure there to do something this year. And so rather than change the law to eliminate that 90-day mandate between candidate filing, primary dates, and general election dates, lawmakers instead decided to move the election. So they basically moved everything back 3 weeks. So primary day is next Tuesday, and then instead of the first Tuesday in November, which is traditionally election day, it will be the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, which, critics have said this is a bad idea. You shouldn't move election days in general. That should be, just something we don't get in the habit of doing. I agree. But also, pushing that election day back to a busy week before a very busy holiday is going to reduce turnout. And I'm guessing we'll probably see that be the case. It is what it is. I think maybe the best thing for Utah lawmakers to have done would have been to not act, to say, look, Congressman Stewart should have thought of this when he decided to announce his retirement, and he didn't, and there's nothing we can do. State law is what it is, and the special election won't happen until next spring. But that's not what they did. And again, I'm sure there was pressure from the National Republican Party and the Speaker of the House himself to not leave that seat empty for a long time. So here we are. What that meant is that county clerks throughout the state on short notice, because this decision was made midsummer, on short notice, county clerks throughout the state had to scramble to move Election Day back and to move primary dates back. And cities had, because most county clerks are helping with the municipal elections. Most of the onus, of course, was on cities, but we did see some counties struggling with this. Not the case here in Cache County, though. Cities will be using the county's election apparatus, if you will, which is one of the benefits of having a county-wide election, an election center that the county set up and operates, but can be used by the cities in a municipal election year. It really allows the cities to kind of put their resources all into, advertising, get out the vote, candidate resources, and more. But it also, the profiles that you might see. But it also allows for, I think, a smoother election process every election year, municipal or otherwise. And so we're seeing that. We saw it put to use for the first time in 2022, in the fall there. And now we'll see it kind of in its stride in these municipal elections. And that's been a lot of work for the county clerk's office. Even though, again, it is a municipal election year, they've been busy. So on top of that, the poor guy is new. Only been in the office a couple of months at this point, with the resignation of former Cache County Clerk Jess Bradfield. So we'll be speaking with the Cache County Clerk later on in the hour. But a question for our listeners, have you plugged in yet? I'm curious about that. The conventional wisdom around municipal races is that people really don't start paying attention until September. But again, in several cities here in the Valley, there will be primaries next Tuesday to eliminate a handful of candidates and bring it down to a general election number of 2. And so this is an important decision that will be made, eliminating some candidates, moving others forward into the general election. And I'm curious if folks are engaged in this. Ballots have gone out. If you're a registered voter, you've got a ballot. It's at your house somewhere. Have you already sent it in? Do you plan to send it in? How do you feel about the crop of candidates in your city, the election in general, moving the dates and more? Let us know. 753-5868. We'll be back with more right after this.
The Aggies are returning home. Beginning this season, USU football and basketball will be back on KVNU. Touchdown, Utah State! Listen to every game, static-free at 102 FM, 610 AM, and online at kvnutalk.com or the KVNU mobile app.
It's recovered by Utah State, and the Aggies get the touchdown.
The season begins September 2nd when Utah State travels to Iowa to face the Hawkeyes. Join us in welcoming the Aggies back to KVNU, the home again for the Aggies.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
There's a place to share gossip about the office party fun, and a place to share the story you tell everyone. There's a place to share a laugh about when things went wrong, and a place to share the video of you dancing to your song. There's a place to share spare change, lunch, and your time. But we could all be better at sharing how we're feeling inside. 76% of employees have struggled with at least one issue that affected their mental health. When you share, you're not alone.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. 753-5868. Wondering if listeners are plugging into the elections yet. Every city has a municipal race or two up for grabs in this cycle. Most cities throughout the state, and quite a few here in Cache Valley and northern Utah at large, have primaries where candidates, a handful of candidates will be whittled down to fewer candidates going on to the general election. That is next Tuesday. Ballots are due by Monday, postmarked. If you haven't gotten them postmarked by Monday, drop them off at a drop box Monday evening or into Tuesday, Election Day. You can also, of course, walk them right into the county clerk's office if you'd like to do that, or your city offices. Drop boxes inside the buildings there, and every single city in the valley has a drop box in the parking lot somewhere. So there are very, very few excuses for not getting that ballot in. Unless you just look at all the candidates and go, I really don't care, would rather not say. So are you paying attention yet? I'm curious because, the conventional wisdom is most people don't plug in until about late September sometime and start paying attention to the general election. But I'm wondering if here in Cache Valley, with so much change afoot and so much on the table for the future when it comes to growth, housing, new construction, loss of open space, changes to our, in many areas still very agricultural communities that are turning into, looking a little bit more at least like the subdivision surrounding Salt Lake. I'm wondering if that has people engaged more at the city level than is traditional. So 753-5868. Also, if there is a particular race or issue in your local city that you would like to bring some attention to and get others paying attention to, welcome to chime in on that as well. You can text us via the group chat. We use Google Chat, and it's KVNU FTP on Google Chat. That's a free service. Also, of course, the phone line, 753-5868. How do you feel about all this, or is it just not on your radar yet? Understandable if that's the case. Charlie Schill with a report today at CacheValleyDaily.com on the finances behind this municipal election cycle here in Logan. Specifically, not a high-dollar election so far as donations and campaign expenditures. With the primary just around the corner next Tuesday, most candidates for the municipal council seats in Logan aren't spending very much. And you would expect, with September 5th primary coming up, anything they plan to spend, they'd be doing so now. So we'll see on the next report. But as of reports filed for the month, or for the campaign cycle so far, filed this month by candidates, those campaign financial reports due to the city on August 29th, by the way. So these are the reports that are in so far. If you're a candidate and you haven't gotten yours in yet, you've got 35 minutes before they close. Now, I think you can file these online now, so you may have until midnight. But total spending by the 9 candidates running for the 3 at-large seats in Logan City, total spending by all of the candidates together, $4,500. Some of the candidates, Charlie reports, haven't spent a thing. The incumbents up for re-election are Mark Anderson and Jeannie Simmons, longtime members of the council, and Councilmember Tom Jensen just decided it was time for him to hang up his hat. He isn't running for re-election. So that leaves 3 seats to be contested, 1 open, and the seat currently held by Mark Anderson and Jeannie Simmons, with both of them seeking re-election and both of them receiving challengers as well in this primary. Anderson's campaign finance reports show contributions of about $1,200, $1,000 of that coming from himself, so not a lot of fundraising going on here, and expenditures of about $800 for some digital advertising, and about $350 left in his campaign budget ahead of the primary. Now, Utah state law, the way it reads, once the primary has come and gone, they change into the general election cycle, at which point the campaigns start fundraising and spending differently. So this is, again, for the primary season, campaign spending and fundraising so far. Simmons has only spent about $14 on her campaign for the primary. Leaves her with about $500 in her campaign war chest for what it is. Now, this isn't out of the ordinary for municipal races. Thankfully, here in Cache Valley, at least for the time being, our races have been relatively less money-driven than they are in parts of the Wasatch Front, and way less money-driven than they are in Salt Lake and Utah counties, where it's a good $50,000 to $100,000 to run for a city council position there at minimum. The reason I say that is that I think that allows for money in politics has done us no favors. I always get frustrated. People have a tendency, and this is all sides of the political island, Republicans and Democrats alike, conservatives, progressives, middle-of-the-roaders, so-called centrists, which I don't really think, we'll get on that another day. I don't believe in centrists. I don't think anyone really is. But they, everyone has this attitude, especially at the federal level, and with celebrity status of elected officials in the Senate and the United States House kind of being a thing now. I guess it was always a thing. Now it just kind of seems to be the thing. Everyone's campaigning for the most clicks and the most shared video quips and witty retorts, and it just gets a little high school, or has gotten a little high school. Well, actually, I think that's a disservice to high schoolers. I think sometimes they're more mature than our federal representatives these days. But it's money. And so everyone thinks if we get rid of this or that politician, think of whoever your most hated federal representative is, a member of the United States Senate, the member of the United States House, the one that you just absolutely cannot see a good thing about and really hope they lose their reelection when they're seeking it. What happens then? Nothing. The name and the face changes. The problem in politics is the money behind it, because the people who are funding these candidates will just start funding someone else and continue down the same road. So I like seeing these numbers in our local elections. I like seeing that very little money has been raised and spent, even by the incumbents. The biggest spenders so far in the races, they're listed here in the CacheValleyDaily.com story. Johnson has spent about $2,400 in digital advertising. Erin Bennett is running. She's actually $90 in the hole. She spent $90 on campaign buttons and has received no contributions. Needham, candidate Joe Needham, he is reporting zero contributions with expenditures of about $140, and that gives you roughly where we're at. Interestingly enough, one of the candidates in this race, Joshua Molitor, has a campaign balance of about $3,500 still, and has spent only $315 so far this cycle. Not sure what he's sitting on that for, but anyway. You can see this all for yourself, by the way, at cachecounty.org/elections, where all the campaign finance reporting reports are downloadable. But again, not a high dollar cycle so far this time around, and I kind of like to see that. Although I hope candidates are doing their best to make sure people remember there is an election. 753-5868. We'll be back after the news with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time 4:31. And reports of shots fired in a West Valley City neighborhood led to a brief lockout at Hunter High School, according to West Valley City Police spokesperson Roxanne Vineku. Shortly before 1 o'clock Monday afternoon, police initiated an investigation into reports of gunshots in a neighborhood west of Hunter High. While officers found shell casings in the area, no victims or suspects were found. As a precaution during the ongoing police investigation, Hunter High School was put on lockout, or lockdown, that is, out of an abundance of caution. Vineku clarified that there was no threat associated with the high school. Granite School District spokesperson Ben Horsley says it was precautionary protocol that was lifted after about an hour. The University of Utah has ordered an outside review of their gymnastics program after allegations that coach Tom Farden emotionally and verbally abused athletes. Gymnasts and parents reported the alleged abuse to university administrators and campus victim advocates, according to a Deseret News report. The report, which entailed interviews with former Utah gymnasts, outlined the allegations and their impacts, which included mental health concerns and claims that Farden favored certain athletes on the team. Farden's profile on the University of Utah athletics page states that he started at the school as an assistant coach in 2011 and has been head coach since 2020. The University of Utah issued a statement Monday that read in part, "The well-being and safety of our student athletes is of the utmost importance to the university and our athletics department. The University of Utah is committed to ensuring our student athletes feel respected, supported, and safe." As part of the statement issued by the U. And federal officials are in Idaho to discuss where to store nuclear waste. The U.S. Nuclear Waste Technical Review Board, an independent federal agency, is holding 2 meetings in Idaho Falls. The first is today and is to be a workshop on the siting of radioactive waste facilities. Wednesday's board meeting will focus on the Energy Department's consent-based siting process for waste. Don Hancock is the Nuclear Waste Program Director for the Southwest Research and Information Center. He says the consent-based process fell by the wayside during the Trump administration, but has become a focus again under President Biden.
They're starting off saying, we think we want to come up with a consent-based process to see if we can store spent fuel for some considerable period of time, but people would be consenting to temporary storage as opposed to permanent disposal.
Hancock says the Obama administration decided the siting process should prioritize temporary sites rather than long-term geological storage, and the Biden administration has picked up there. The public can be involved with both of the nuclear waste. Hancock notes that Boise State University was selected by the Energy Department to receive $2 million to study consent-based siting. However, he says it's not clear what that means for Idaho. KVNU News Time is 4:35.
People in Florida bracing for a stronger and more dangerous Hurricane Idalia moving northward. Its center in the Gulf of Mexico, west of Cape Coral, could hit northwest Florida in the morning. In Tampa, Gracie Cruz getting ready.
With so many more people moving into Florida, if you're planning to get away, you start ahead of time.
Thousands of Florida National Guard troops are mobilized to help, says the Pentagon. The storm causing thousands of flight delays and hundreds of cancellations across the U.S. President Biden announcing 10 drugs chosen for Medicare price negotiation under the Inflation Reduction Act.
Today is the start of a new deal for patients where Big Pharma doesn't just get a blank check at your expense and the expense of the American people.
The drug industry is going to court to try to stop the effort. A court filing from the DA asks to have all 19 defendants, including former President Trump, tried together in the Georgia election interference case. Chuck Sievertson, ABC News.
KVNU weather for tonight, mostly clear and a little bit on the windy side. South winds 15 to 25 miles per hour early this evening. Overnight low in the low 50s. Some patchy smoke moving in with a cold front tomorrow. It will be sunny and cooler, high around 80. It's been to 93 this afternoon. It's 90 right now at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Whole Tree Care. Your trees and shrubs are growing like crazy. Are they blocking your view or posing a potential hazard? Call Whole Tree Care. They trim, shape, and remove trees. Call 435-760-6587. And you can always get more news at CashValleyDaily.com. Let's check Wall Street now with Edward Jones.
This is financial advisor Clayton McMurdy from Edward Jones, bringing you the closing financial market report for Tuesday, August 29th. After a solid gain yesterday, equities logged another strong increase today with a fresh read on the labor market driving optimism around the potential for less Fed intervention ahead. Global equities were largely higher, with Asian markets leading as Chinese stocks saw a boost from the prospects of additional government stimulus to combat China's slowing economy. Looking around the horn, oil and gold prices were up, bonds rallied, and sector leadership came largely from the cyclical sectors, reflecting a more upbeat tone to Tuesday's trading. 10-year Treasury rates dropped near 4.1%, down markedly from a recent highs near 4.35 last week, having risen by nearly 0.5% from mid-July as interest rates received a boost from better-than-expected economic readings. That resilience in the economy, in turn, upped the odds that the Fed will maintain its restrictive policy stance. We think the Fed will opt for a pause in its September meeting, but markets are currently pricing in about a 50-50 chance that the Fed will hike rates again before year end. Although we think the Fed's tightening campaign is near its end, we expect markets to be sensitive to Fed commentary as investors shift from focusing on hikes to assessing how long the Fed will have to hold rates at this level to gain comfort that inflation will head back to a more acceptable reading. We believe inflation will continue to moderate, but not at the same pace as we've seen over the past year, as shelter and services prices have proved to be persistent despite encouraging signs across many other consumer price categories. Today in equities, the Dow closed up 293 points at 34,853. The Nasdaq was up 239 points at 13,944, and the S&P 500 was up 64 points at 4,498. In bond markets, 10-year Treasury yields are trading at 4.12%, and in commodity markets, the price of crude oil was up $1.11 at $81.21, and the spot price of gold was up $19.30 at $1,966.10. This has been Tuesday's Closing Financial Market Report, brought to you by Clayton McMurdy of Edward Jones, member SIPC, serving individual investors with personalized attention and long-term financial advice at 1309 North Main Street in Logan. If you'd like any current stock prices or additional information, feel free to call our office at 435-753-0537 or reach out to any of our advisors here in Cache Valley or find us online at edwardjones.com.
What if you could come home every day to a peaceful retreat nestled in the mountains? A place that's only minutes from downtown Logan, but offers access to national forests from your own backyard, surrounded by mountains, horse riding, hiking trails, babbling brooks, and more. All this at Maple Creek Ranch, which is now in its fourth and final phase of development. 2.5-acre lots, your own piece of paradise that's remote yet accessible. And road improvements will be completed this summer. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Go to maplecreekranch.net. Maple Creek Ranch, just east of Franklin, Idaho.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Cache County Clerk and Auditor David Benson joining us at 5:10 today in Hour 2. One of the busiest people in the county right now, he and his staff, helping cities via the Cache County Election Center run these elections. Primary election next Tuesday, general election in late November, and it's the first full test. Well, that's not fair. The first test of the election center was 2022. But this is the first election that is run without, at the same time, trying to set up an election center. So we'll have kind of an update from the new Cache County Clerk and Auditor on that. We'll also talk to David about what it meant when the legislature changed the primary date and general election date on short notice to allow for the special election to elect Congressman Stewart, or replace, rather, Congressman Stewart. And that was... the legislature made that decision after candidate filing period has closed, and everyone had already planned on the dates that were set. So it was a pretty hectic thing. So we'll have a chance to talk to him about that, what they're doing as far as using new technology and more. That's coming up at 5:10 today. This is Utah is a beautiful state. We all agree on that, right? This was kind of an interesting argument I saw bubbling up online today. And Bill, maybe you have a preference, too, on this one. But there was sort of a north, south, east, west kind of argument on Twitter today. People from southern Utah, the Red Rock Canyons and Goblin Valley and the beautiful horizons and sunsets you can see around Moab and even in St. George, although I don't think many people would describe St. George as beautiful. It's a city in a desert. Many people would describe it as beautiful. If you've ever met anyone from out of state, and I know you've had this experience, but we've talked about it before. I had some friends from D.C. come into Utah and actually come here to the studio, and they were late getting here. They were going to be here about half an hour early. They got here about 5 minutes early, and they said, sorry, we thought we'd be here a lot earlier, but we kept stopping to take pictures through the canyon. Sardine Canyon.
Yeah.
None of us have done that.
Well, I do it occasionally, especially
if you see something
in the fall. I mean, it's gorgeous in the fall, and I think this fall it's going to be knock your socks off with the colors through there.
Yeah, the wet spring and kind of wet summer too. It is, but it's just easy to take your surroundings for granted. So that kind of struck me when they said we kept stopping to take pictures. But so this argument that broke out online today, it was on Twitter, and a lawmaker started it. A lawmaker made an offhanded comment about southern Utah and said, they were talking about tourism, tourism dollars, what it means for cities. And lawmaker said, absolutely nothing compares to the beauty of southern Utah. And a lawmaker from the Salt Lake area said, whatever, have you ever gone out into the hills around Salt Lake and even over towards Park City and Summit County in the spring or the fall? And it was a sort of a joke. Well, then people kind of got serious about it. And it turned into an all-out social media throwdown today. And they the arguments were, regional, of course, and then people started sharing photos, and every photo was beautiful, but it got me thinking, do I have a favorite part of Utah? And I don't know. Obviously living here, I'm partial to northern Utah, to Cache Valley. I do love, I love that you can, say you've got a 1 hour lunch break, you can grab some food that you've made, or stop even and grab something through a drive-through, and be up the canyon with a beautiful view or the sounds of a river and slightly cooler air, and during the inversion, slightly cleaner air. Eat your food and get back to work on time on a 1 hour lunch. That's amazing, really, to be able to do that. And it's also something, that is unique to our geography, that people in, say, Salt Lake County technically could do, but it's going to be a lot harder, and you're going to need a 2 hour lunch. So that's one of the things I love about Cache Valley. I do think we have some beautiful sunsets here, but I'll also admit I think Box Elder County has beautiful sunsets because they've got a broader horizon. The Wellsville's kind of, it can block things out sometimes. That's why,
especially when the sun starts, heading that direction again.
So the lower hills on that horizon for Box Elder County in the west. But again, I just started thinking as I watched these people arguing, and again, some people taking it very seriously, almost insulted that a lawmaker would suggest southern Utah is prettier than northern Utah. And then some folks started chiming in areas that I'd never thought of as beautiful. I'd never run through the entire state and thought, pretty, not pretty. I've never ranked it. But I've never considered the area around that chunk of Willard Bay closer to the Smith and Edwards location. There's actually a little road you can turn out across from Smith and Edwards there that goes out, in that direction. Well, someone apparently runs out there every day, and because of this argument that broke out at 7 a.m. of all things, she took a photo. She said, "This is my run right now." And it was the most amazing sunset with birds flying over water, photo. And she literally, well, I mean, maybe not. Maybe she's secretly a professional photographer and had staged this whole thing. But she claimed, at least in her tweet, she had seen the argument happening before she started her run, and she decided when she got there, she's going to pull her phone out, take a picture, and post it to this same Twitter thread where people were arguing about where in Utah was prettier. And it was amazing. But I'll be honest with you, I've never thought, if someone said to me, where's a scenic area I can go to around Smith and Edwards, I would have said, oh, there's nothing scenic there. You're going to want to go east or west a lot further, north or south a lot further. But it was beautiful. So anywhere can be beautiful at the right time of day or under the right conditions. What they were arguing about, again, was from a tourist's perspective. And so that's my question for listeners, for you, Bill. I've made a list of my own, but if someone's coming from out of state and you can only tell them like 2 places in Utah, they have the option to travel the whole state, but you can only tell them 2 places that are must not misses. What are your 2? Only 2. 753-5868. Get some responses right after this.
It's been a crazy few months with big rainstorms fueling the weeds in your lawn, garden, or empty lot, and the spiders coming inside to beat the heat. You need help. Let Logan Extermination take care of those pesky weeds and unwanted pests with an exterior lawn application and interior treatment for bugs. Call Logan Extermination today before your home becomes enemy territory. Logan Extermination, 752-8450.
Weed control starts at $45. Interior spider spray starts at $95.
Hey, how you doing? We all know how it can be to go to the wrong place for car repair. And lights on again. Can you believe this? Unbelievable.
Free local towing for major repairs over $500 at your local AA MCO.
You can find your local AMCO at 75 East, 2000 North in North Logan, 752-1940.
AA MCO.
Turning my pain into purpose is pretty much what I have done to start this foundation.
In August 2020, after the death of George Floyd, Bridget Floyd and other family members established the George Floyd Memorial Foundation in support of the Black community.
It's going to take more than just us as a foundation. It's going to take the community, the world, to make a change.
Fight for racial justice for the Black community. Learn how at lovehasnolabels.com. Brought to you by Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. 753-5868. If you had a friend or a family member visiting Utah for the first time, maybe the only time, and you could only tell them 2 places to not miss in Utah, as far as, you know, putting Utah on show, putting, displaying its beauty, what it's like to live here. From a tourist perspective, the most impressive places they could visit, and you could only name 2. What are the 2 places in Utah you would tell them to not miss? 753-5868. Some responses coming in through the Google chat here as well. We're KVNU FTP on Google chat if you want to chime in that way. I came up with 2. Bill, I don't know if you have 2 that off the top of your head you would recommend. We'll see if we can inspire listeners to weigh in here as well. This stems from an argument a lawmaker today accidentally started. Lawmaker on Twitter was just talking about tourism dollars in Utah, the revenue the state gets from tourism, and was saying, not meaning any harm, saying southern Utah, the biggest contributor. The state gets a lot from tourism, a lot of money, a lot of revenue for cities and counties. And it's something they're proud of in southern Utah. So no harm meant, but the way he worded it was kind of putting the rest of the state down. I don't think he intended it that way, but he was kind of saying, look, if it weren't for southern Utah, Moab, Zion Canyon, things like that, Utah would not be a tourism destination. And, man, people lit him up. People were sharing photos from their morning runs around the Smith and Edwards area in the Willard Bay with the sun coming up there and some birds. It was beautiful. I didn't see any from Cache County. I thought about submitting some of my own that I'd taken on a recent hike. But everyone admittedly feels like the place where they live is the best. Well, I mean, not always. But if you chose to stay somewhere, you probably think it's a pretty great place to be. If you're trapped here by a job you don't like, maybe you don't like Cache Valley so much. But so I shouldn't say everyone.
It's a hard decision because there are so many. I mean, Utah is just a snapshot state wherever you go, pretty much, unless you're know out in the northwest corner of out in Box Elder County in the middle of nowhere in the desert.
Sure.
I don't know if that is scenic. Maybe some people consider it as scenic or not too bad, but there's so many places.
That's I have a friend who absolutely loves flat, kind of boring desert expanses. And so if given the choice between some beautiful red rock scenic byway through Capitol Reef or something like that, or being out in Snowville or west of Snowville, east of Snowville even, that whole area out there, he'd prefer that.
Yeah, I can see that.
And the sunsets out there can be beautiful. Sunrises out there can be beautiful. So, I think it's really subjective. I had a hard time coming up with two because, so personally, I think one of the most beautiful places in the state of Utah is a place you can backpack to in between Franklin Basin and Tony Grove. If you've never been to the area, I recommend it. It's it's not an easy hike. It's not bad, but it is. If you start from the Franklin Basin area, it's about 2,000 feet of elevation gain in the first 1,000 feet of trail. So it's pretty steep, zigzagging back and forth up about 2,000 feet to that ridge south of Franklin Basin. And then it drops on a steady decline from there. And so then the walk out is mostly a steady incline, not steep, but steady. But it's not not a hard hike. Children do it. Boy Scouts used to do it all the time. But you hike into Steam Mill Lake. And when you get back in there, the mountains start to look a little bit like the Sawtooth Mountains in Idaho, up around the Stanley, Idaho area. They're just jagged and just almost mean looking. But it's beautiful in the springtime. The grass and moss growing way up the rocks. You're kind of just barely above the tree line, so you're still in the trees for your campsite, but you're walking through the last of that tree line at your elevation. I mean, it's just amazing. You pass every kind of forest scenery you can see in Utah and Wyoming and Idaho. In that little stretch. Anyway, it's just a beautiful area. And then also, even though you're not far from anything, really, I mean, this isn't an area where you're likely to, if you had to hike out in an emergency, you're likely to make that hike out just fine, unless it's freezing, which it does up there pretty early. But in the summertime, it's a short walk either direction down to Tony Grove or back up to Franklin Basin, or even you could go straight out to the road if you wanted to cross country it. And do a little mountaineering, of course. So you're not in a dangerous area at all, but you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. You feel like you've backpacked. I've been on backpacking trips where you go, 2 or 3 days in before you get to your destination where you're going to spend your time. And you feel so isolated and so far away from things. And that's a really fun part of the experience. This is something you can do on a weekend night. You could do this. I wouldn't recommend leaving at like 5 or 6. But you could leave at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, hike in there, spend the night, hike out the next morning, and still have a good chunk of your Saturday or Sunday left. It's just a beautiful thing. So to me, that's something I'd recommend if you want to experience Utah. How wild and untouched, and open and away from cities Utah can be in a short drive and a short backpacking hike. So that's something I would recommend as one of my two. And then the other one I decided I would recommend, this everyone's going to say this is cliche, but Goblin Valley.
Never been there.
It's not. The funny thing is I hesitated to put this on my 2-thing list because Capitol Reef is amazing to see. Most of what you can do around Moab, even just walking out through some of those slot canyons when it's not raining, please. It's surreal. I think, and beautiful, and it looks fake in so many places. Even some of the red rocks you can see around St. George and the Virgin River Gulch there as you go through. It's astounding what you can see in so many parts of Utah. I think eastern Utah is beautiful as you get out towards the Nevada border there. Some of those lava canyons and things like that you can see out there just look like somebody made them, like 3D printing. How did this happen naturally? It's stunning places to see everywhere. But Goblin Valley is one of the most amazing and kind of unsettling things at the same time. It's like not. There are two places. Craters of the Moon up in Idaho and Goblin Valley have a similar kind of look and feel to them. And so those two places, if you want to see something that will just, you won't ever be able to forget. It's hard to describe the feeling you get when you see Goblin Valley, especially for the first time. It doesn't look like it can be real. It looks man-made. It looks like a movie set. And then
Star Trek or something.
Yeah, some fake Mars landscape. But then knowing that these hoodoos are real and that they're naturally made by wind and erosion, makes it even more surreal walking through it. And it's kind of like walking through like a rock forest. So, yeah, those were my two recommendations. Another listener chiming in here saying that they would recommend, I can see this. They would recommend the timing of your visit more than any specific location. Listener says, I would tell them to come back twice, once in the spring and once in the fall, and make sure whatever you do in Utah, that one of your planned drives was through Logan Canyon to Garden City. A beautiful thing to do in the spring, beautiful thing to do in the fall. That's great. The third listener here chiming in saying, I would avoid the entire Washington County area. And once you've been there, you've been there. It all looks the same. Okay, kind of unfair, but I get it. I feel that way about 75% of Wyoming and a good chunk of eastern Colorado. There are places where you just want to get through it as quick as you can. But there are some beautiful areas outside of St. George and Cedar City. Short hikes you can do. So I don't agree that once you've been there for 10 minutes, it's all the same. Last one here. A listener says, I would tell them to stop, make their decisions more based on food than location.